We'll be right back. Hello, Scott. How you doing? Alright, this is what I get for doing a late night show. It's just you and me for now. I'm going to go ahead and roll my credits. Hello, Scott. How you doing? This is what I get for doing a late night show. It's just you and me for now. Go ahead and roll my credits. Haha, it's my new intro. Thanks, baby. Ooh. I'm just watching my credits. I made my credits. They're here. All right. We're going to start with looking at some possible moon base footage from what is apparently Apollo 11. But like everything, we'll take it with a grain of salt. Let's check it out. We're going to start with looking at some possible moon base footage. Now, tomorrow, NASA makes a big announcement about the moon. So let's check the moon out. This is supposedly footage of an existing former moon base. Why?
Esta fue la verdad.
Why, you
La
ask?
única y secreta verdad. Aquel 21 de julio de 1969, Armstrong y Aldrin se alejaron escasos metros del módulo, filmando esta
You all speak
increíble
Spanish,
postura.
right? Okay.
Esta película de 14 minutos jamás fue difundida por NASA.
Now, it's a real good thing we're about to spend $28 billion to go back to the moon, because if we didn't, I mean, who knows what would be going on up there.
Escasos metros sí del águila. Y no fue casualidad. Todo estaba minuciosamente programado. Estas misteriosas ruinas, como otras igualmente filmadas por los restantes
Okay,
Apolos,
now those costumes of theirs are a little suspect, I'll be honest. But the Grand Archway right there has been spoken of before. So, again, grain of salt. We're exploring the concept that there's already plenty of base on the moon, and not all your base belong to us.
Edificios en ruinas. Edificios en la superficie de la luna.
And I've got my chat window open here if anyone has any questions or comments. We're going to watch this video here. What's up, Clint? Oh, brother man. We're going to watch this video here, which is about supposed secret moon base footage from the past. And then we're going to talk about what's supposed to happen in the near future, according to NASA, with the moon, and with $28 billion, which I'm sure will be put to good use. Alright. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this could be the moon. It could be a fucking burned down, you know, Ukrainian parking lot. Who knows? But what matters here is the concept. If you recall last time, we watched the footage from the Apollo 20 mission, joint exercise between US and Russia back in '76, during which they found a humanoid alien on the moon with 6 fingers on each hand, a woman that I believe to be an angel. They also found angelic script there. This craft was there for a very long time. Now, keep in mind that time travel is on the table. It's just illegal.
Los militares habían satisfecho la primera parte de su diabólico plan. Ahora quedaba la segunda.
Got 5 peeps in the house. How we doing? Just have my coffee. Okay, multi-level structures, obviously. Now, this makes us wonder about how gravity works up there. But don't think for a minute that they couldn't create an ionosphere, similar to what we have on Earth. Very few places have this. And that ionosphere could create gravity. What's up, Ricky? Oh, that's freaky. I wouldn't go in there.
Según mi confidente, los astronautas procedieron a lo programado. Recogieron muestras de los muros, tomaron medidas y se retiraron.
Okay, pay attention to those leg warmer looking things for a later what you're going to see at the end of the next video. And also keep in mind, if these are Russian guys, these are the same guys that would have gone in and mopped up Chernobyl, so I actually give them a bit of credit, man. They're grabbing samples. Putin said, hey, get up there. No, it wasn't Putin. It was Khrushchev.
Presentaba 12 huecos o ventanas y una especie de puerta frontal de 5 metros de fondo por 3 de altura. Según los análisis practicados en la Tierra, el material con el que había sido construido era similar al de la superficie. Un 60% de los átomos era oxígeno.
I'm going to turn it up a little more.
0,01% del peso
I have a pretty
constituido por
primitive
hidrógeno.
system of delivery right now, but I will.
Las paredes se hallaban muy erosionadas. Esta circunstancia,
Muy
dado que en la Luna
emocionadas.
no existe prácticamente atmósfera, hizo pensar a los militares que el edificio en cuestión podía tener varios miles de años.
He just said it looks like they've been there for thousands of
La
years.
secreta excursión de Armstrong y Aldrin a este hangar y naturalmente los 14
This is when you ask yourself sometimes,
jamás fueron
what year is it really?
oficialmente no existe.
Okay, so that's our first video. This is talking about discoveries of the past on the moon.
Base of the moon. It was a monumental achievement, and people began to speculate about the countless other goals we could accomplish in the following decades. Little did they know that we wouldn't set foot on the moon or any other celestial body for half a century or more. As of early 2020, the world space agencies haven't launched any missions that have resulted in humans landing on the moon, even though we've had the technology for over 5 decades.
And the
There's been a
bases.
lot of talk about manned missions to Mars in recent years, but we're probably still several years away from even considering such a project, let alone trying to construct a self-sustaining Martian colony. But if NASA
That's
is
also
saying
been
that,
done.
we'll only have to wait 4 more years until the space program launches its most ambitious project ever. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the upcoming Artemis program and consider what exactly it would take for NASA to pull off their plan for a permanent lunar base. Back in May of 2019, NASA announced their bold new project, fittingly.
One thing I'm going to draw your attention to. Why is NASA always invoking the Egyptians when it comes to the moon, asteroids? You just had Osiris Rex, etc., etc.
Named Artemis, a nod to the Apollo program. This new endeavor aims to land more humans on the moon by 2024, including the first woman. Whereas the Apollo missions aim to land astronauts on the moon for relatively
I'm
brief
so
periods of
sure.
time, Artemis missions will
The
be
first
much more
woman
elaborate.
was found on the
NASA hopes
moon.
to station astronauts on the moon for up to weeks at a time, studying the lunar surface and setting up equipment that can be used for future missions, with an end goal of eventually turning the moon into a staging area for missions to Mars and beyond. Speaking of Mars,
Why?
NASA
What a
considers
novel
their Artemis
idea.
missions
It
to
hasn't been
practice
going
future
on
moon missions to the red
forever.
planet. After all, it's much easier to get to the moon than to Mars, taking only 3 days instead of multiple months. If they can prove that manned, longer-term trips to the moon are feasible and can be done safely and reliably, that would be a big step towards getting the go-ahead for a manned trip to Mars. Of course, doing anything in space is very expensive. And when you
Yes,
put
very
human lives into the
expensive.
mix, it
Requires a
becomes even more
giant
so.
$28 billion hedge fund, blank check, whatever it takes, guys. Whatever it takes to get us all caught up
But if you've watched my video about
with
what NASA
the
can do with
narrative.
the U.S. military budget, you'll realize that it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we spend on weapons of war every single year.
No shit
For
on
example,
that.
consider the failed F-35 fighter jet. Originally built as a one-size-fits-all, super versatile military masterpiece, the F-35 program is now a decade behind schedule, the machine fails to deliver on any of its promises,
Good
and
job,
the entire
Trump.
program has cost $1.5 trillion.
They couldn't make a fighter jet.
But that's not terribly surprising. The U.S. loves to spend absurd amounts of money on the military.
Yes, it
The
does.
entire Artemis program will cost just 4% of the annual military budget. When you look at it that
Now
way,
that's
it's
frightening.
pretty remarkable what NASA hopes to accomplish on a comparatively tiny budget. Now, the Artemis program hasn't been without its own challenges. A critical component for the missions is the Space Launch System.
Its own
or
challenges
SLS,
being
which
its own
includes an absolutely
misinformation.
massive rocket to help carry astronauts and equipment to the moon. The first of these rockets was supposed to launch back in 2017. 3 years later, NASA expects it will still take another year to get them off the ground. Running behind schedule isn't uncommon for space programs, but it is expensive. They're currently burning tens of millions of dollars just trying to catch up. Once they finally do get a working rocket, there's another problem. The SLS rocket is single-use. Unlike some other large rockets like the Falcon Heavy, each SLS rocket will be scrapped after one launch. Unfortunately, the solution isn't as simple as switching to the Falcon Heavy. The SLS is still much larger than anything SpaceX currently offers. It should be able to carry more than twice the payload of a Falcon Heavy. And all of that size and power is needed to ferry all the mission-critical materials and astronauts to the moon. Hopefully NASA can figure out a way to make the SLS reusable. But for now, that's another big expense and time sink for the program. But let's set all of that aside for now. The really exciting part is what NASA has planned for the next phase of Artemis. Beginning in 2022, NASA will start building what they call the Gateway, a sort of spaceport for astronauts going to and from the moon. housing a resupply station, an orbital laboratory, living quarters, and other useful bits and pieces for launching missions deeper into space. When astronauts make future trips to the moon, their module will first dock at the Gateway, where they can get any supplies they need before proceeding to land on the moon. These first temporary trips to the moon are just the first steps towards the ultimate goal. After a few years of preliminary missions, setting up equipment and making sure everything is going according to plan, NASA wants to establish a permanent lunar colony around 2028.
They want to establish something that's not already there, apparently, according to NASA.
What if we could create fuel far from Earth, say on the moon? One of NASA's primary goals is to set up a water mining operation on the moon. The water molecules can be separated into hydrogen and oxygen, both critical components of rocket fuel. If we could get a functional refueling station established on the moon, we could extend our reach farther than ever before.
We could.
Missions to Mars and well beyond.
If we hadn't told everyone that this was impossible.
We could send astronauts to live and work on the moon for months at a time, or maybe even longer. This would give us valuable information about how the human body responds to life in deep space. But of course, the United States isn't the only country eyeing the moon as a pit stop for future missions. While international space law is very outdated, there are some regulations regarding the claiming of territory on celestial bodies and the ownership of space resources. If we're lucky, working side by side in outer space
it just seems like everyone wants to get to the moon all of a sudden.
Regardless of nationality. And maybe we could see international cooperation as we forge a new path into the future and the stars. If you'd like to learn more about the future...
If you'd like to learn more about the future, he says. Oopsie. Here we go. So, if you'd like to learn more about the future, he says, the future of different countries, I almost said companies, and that would be funny, contributing their efforts together to go back to the moon. So, let's look at an article. Okay. NASA unveils a flabbergasting budget for moon missions. NASA is in the throes of yet another budget crunch in its efforts to realize the Trump administration's plans to return astronauts to the moon by 2024. Okay, so the reason that we're doing this show right now is because tomorrow NASA is going to make a big announcement about the moon. And what they're going to tell you is that they're going to build a base on the moon. Wow! Except that they've already got. And other people already got. And other non-people already got. But that's the good thing, is that the rules up there are changing rapidly. $28 billion. $28 billion they're allocating for this Artemis program. Okay, first of all, you have everything suddenly being named after the Egyptians. And like the Egyptians, these men in power would like to be gods. But they're not. They could be, but they're not. They could have been. See, the Egyptians, your leftovers from Atlantis, taking ET tech, cooperating with the Anunnaki, send that gold. Here comes the Anunnaki like Leprechaun going, I want me gold. Okay, so we're naming everything after these Egyptians now, and what they want to do by Christmas is that they need to approve $3.2 billion to go to the fucking moon when they've already fucking been. And meanwhile, we're all dying of starvation down here, they would like to think, but we're adapting quite well. And the clock has run out on these people. The clock has run out on these people. I'm going to pull up. It's just going to take me a moment. I'm going to pull up a video from the GFL. One second. We do this on the fly sometimes, so pardon my, here we go.
Hello and welcome to this first video in a series introducing SAP Crisp Reports 2016 to new users. My name is
Contactee.
In this video, we'll cover...
Alright.
Hello Galactic family. We are very close to the new economic changes happening now in your life reality to change the planet and transform step by step into a new era. A special message to the starseeds of New Earth for immediate planetary broadcast. The following information is derived from direct, decoded etheric transmissions from benevolent light forces docked in Earth's solar system, and some of the data comes directly from certain inside Earth Alliance members known as the White Hats, and the Great White Brotherhood strategically placed in key positions of power by the galactics on the surface of planet Earth. Great Ones. Recent Earth Alliance intel indicates that light forces have now achieved a major victory in Operation Pandora over remaining Draco forces in sublunar space, for the liberation of planet Earth. Only light beings who are tuned into the higher realms are aware this battle is even occurring, let alone how important it is. This energetic clearing operation has been occurring behind the scenes on behalf of humanity for some time now to pave the way for humanity's imminent grand evolutionary event. Many do not know that over the last 3 Earth weeks, there's some very close calls that occurred as light forces were finalizing the programming of Earth's new 5D VTXC energy grid. A strong Pandora security breach was initiated by nefarious forces last week, but was quickly deflected and neutralized by Delta Light forces. Due to the critical nature of humanity's coming ascension event, 36 Earth hours ago, planetary light forces deployed a major offensive in sublunar space against these remaining nefarious beings who have still been holding the Earth hostage. The Earth Alliance now reports that light forces have emerged 100% victorious from this final hellacious battle above the Earth. The great battle for planet Earth is finally coming to its end, and for the first time in modern history, sublunar space has been completely cleared of these dark Draco entities. The Earth Alliance says, this clearing will now quickly filter itself down onto the surface, and the citizens of planet Earth will begin to experience magnificent energies of freedom and lightness as Earth's gamma timeline moves forward toward the event culmination in 2020. You will hear about all of it in the coming days, Great One, and it will indeed be an incredible October surprise. Light forces also say this recent energetic clearing will reach a major positive turning point on Earth's timeline during the first week of November 2020. The grand ascension of humanity is now imminent.
You see that?
Past direct Earth Alliance
we are going to
channels
talk more about
indicate every way
misinformation,
that
by the way.
a spectacular event is about to occur on Earth, where consciousness levels will be increased to the 5th dimensional level. This is the time spoken of old by many prophets and visionaries, when humanity would begin moving from the long period of cosmic darkness into the blinding new light of the Golden Age.
Golden Age.
We can tell you that December 21st, 2020 is a very special moment on the galactic wheel of time and in human history. At that grand marker in time at 11:11 a.m. UTC, the new golden age of Aquarius will finally dawn, and the new 5D Earth will be born on Earth. A major energetic ascension portal will open in the heavens as celestial alignments mark the great time of humanity. Due to the cosmic alignments near the end of December, the central sunlight of the glorious Sat Yuga Golden Age, which began in 2012, will be able to fully shine again on planet Earth on December 21st, 2020. The cosmic gates will be fully opened on the day, and the most powerful, unstoppable and blinding stream of 40 Hz gamma light in history will blast through the heavens and flow into the planet. Here are the major celestial events of Earth year 2020 which are leading up to the December 21st, 2020 Grand Alignment. a rare 3,000-year triple conjunction, in a 33-year Saturn-Pluto conjunction, a 13-year Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, the annular solar eclipse, that also happens to fall on the exact same day as the 2020 summer solstice.
What are they talking about? What are they talking about? They're talking about how they just cleared the sublunar space above Earth of draconian, nefarious, insidious, failed entities that are banished. So how this trickles down to Earth, quote unquote, is that, okay, you gotta understand dark forces, dark matter, black goo, things of this nature. This is the nature of chemtrails in your environment, used for all kinds of things, but namely the placement of heavy metals that can be manipulated to manipulate this ionosphere under the previous regime. So what this means is that there's been a lot of shakeup on the moon going on, and as Earth and other planets in our orbit raise in their dimensional density, which we could look at the Schumann resonance and talk about, I recommend you check that every day. As the planet raises its frequency, because the people on it are accepting higher energies being warped into this planet through its core, entities of a negative, perhaps demonic, draconian, reptilian nature no longer have the ability to deceive all of us. And at that point is when you start to see things happening where people just aren't going to fall for it anymore. They're not going to fall for the same misinformation because we know too much by now, and we're getting smarter every day because the meta gene is now active. So, on the subject of misinformation, there's something I would like to talk about. I'm probably only going to talk about this once because there's an election coming up and it's obvious what's going on to me. We're going to talk about QAnon really quick. I'm going to tell you my theory of what QAnon really is. And QAnon is a guy called 15 that earlier in history, he was an MK op. He was a candidate guy that would pretty much do anything. So he got anything that he wanted. And what he wanted was to merge blank slate technology, which is now being used to jump timelines for us. For the good guys. We're the good guys, remember? 15 wanted to merge his consciousness with artificial intelligence into a quantum computer, thus giving us this thing called Q, right? Now, you take some gleamings of truth from this concept, you introduce them with the negative agenda. You merge these two things, you take a tiny sprinkling of fact, and you take all of the agenda you want, you put them together, and you sell it to people as Q drops, intel, insider. Everyone wants to be an insider now, okay? But this is causing problems. This is causing a lot of problems for people, actual real people, because of this trolling of the truth. First of all, you're trying to make the heroes out of the villains. You're trying to say, oh, this country, he created a program against human trafficking. Oh, that's really a nice token gesture. This is a game of layers on the onion. You know, then you have, he's working with Putin to fight the NWO. Yeah, him, Putin, China, Rothschild, all of that, that's your NWO. So you are being sold, literally sold, this. That the same people causing the problems are the ones fixing all the problems, and so all the problems are solved, right? No. They're trying to give you all COVID, so you have to take a vaccine that puts your entire soul at risk. They're not going to get away with it. They're not going to get away with it. Because you can't successfully deceived the entire disclosure, the entire conspiracy theory community by selling him this hot dog that says all the bad guys are the good guys, and basically co-ops counterintelligence on a citizenry level. So I'm here to speak against that, and I'm probably going to catch all kind of trolling for saying that, but you know what? I see it every day. I see it every day. Innocent people being deceived into buying the Kool-Aid, man. Buying that Kool-Aid. I'm not having it. People's lives are at stake. People's actual lives are at stake, and their families' lives and all this. So if you want to debate me about COVID and QAnon and who, you know, what leads to what, all roads of ignorance lead to death. So I just had to say that. And the reason that you're going to see QAnon ramping up, talking all about Biden and his kid, and how this laptop of his ended up in Eastern Europe, where everything is exactly what it seems to be. Regardless, I'm not saying that Biden's a great guy. I'm not saying his kid's a great guy, but I'm saying he has one thing going for him, and that he's not Trump. And this whole thing of everything suddenly being about the election when it comes to QAnon and all this, proof that it's a psyop. It's an actual psyop. I'm going to show you another video that's on the topic of misinformation, because this is a video about a man back in the, I think, 90s that he made contact on his own. He discovered the Dulce base in New Mexico on his own, and the government basically took him, tried to make him into a patsy. This is an important concept, a patsy, because that's who your president is right now. So, but this is on the human cost of misinformation, because misinformation has a human cost, and that's why this has to happen. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing what I'm doing for guys like Paul BENNEWITZ, who is completely discredited and ended up in a fucking insane asylum when he made contact himself. What the? This is the downside of doing it this way. Okay. The music's really annoying. So, Paul BENNEWITZ. Back in the 90s, he discovers how to make contact with extraterrestrials because he lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is a highway. I've had locals tell me about this out there. I've been there. I didn't see anything when I was there, but I was very much asleep then. This was about 10 years ago.
The Life and Time of Paul BENNEWITZ. In 1979, Paul BENNEWITZ operated a small electronics company called Thunder Scientific Corporation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was a brilliant physicist and inventor. He also had an avid interest in UFOs and was an investigator for APRO, Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, the Arizona UFO group founded by Jim and Coral Lorenzen. From his home on the outskirts of Albuquerque, BENNEWITZ had, along with others, seen strange lights in the night sky over the Manzano test range outside Albuquerque. The lights seemed to appear almost every evening and to fly towards Coyote Canyon, also a part of the Kirtland Air Force Base area that included Sandia National Laboratory and Phillips Laboratory, both of which conduct ultra-top secret government research.
So he's a private
In
citizen
early 1980,
in New Mexico.
Paul BENNEWITZ became involved in observing and filming objects which he had sighted on the ground and in the air near Kirtland Air Force Base in the Manzano Range. Reportedly, his wife Cindy was also present to witness some of the first landings he witnessed and filmed in the Coyote Canyon area. Subsequently, on October 24, 1980, he contacted Major Ernest Edwards of the Kirtland Security Police who, over the period of the next few months, became concerned and requested the guards on the Manzano weapons storage area to report to him any sightings of unusual aerial lights. At the beginning of August 1980, 3 guards reported sighting an aerial light which descended on the Sandia Military Reservation. Ernest Edwards reported the sighting to a Fosse special agent Richard Doty, unaware that Doty had already heard from Russ Curtis.
Richard Doty, big thumbs down for you, Richard Doty. Thumbs down, you ass.
Near a structure just minutes after the sighting by the 3 Manzano guards.
I hate to say it, but Richard Doty,
reports and several others in his formal report, forwarding it to a Fosse,
he's a blue booker.
Air Force Office of Special Investigations, headquarters in Washington, D.C. From this point on, many other persons became involved. Bennewitz was called to a meeting at Kirtland AFB at which several major Air Force officers and Sandia personnel were present, including a brigadier general. Ernest Edwards has confirmed that the 3 guards under his command reported what was described, and that the meeting did take place. Richard Doty and Jerry Miller, scientific advisor for Air Force Test and Evaluation Center, Kirtland AFB, interviewed Bennewitz in his home on the edge of Manzano Base. They examined Bennewitz's films and tapes, and Miller, a former Project Blue Book investigator at Wright-Patterson AFB, determined that the films did show some type of unidentified aerial objects. They also noted the array of electronic surveillance equipment that Bennewitz had pointed at Manzano. A Fosse declined to investigate further, but scheduled an inspection of Bennewitz's data by personnel at Wright-Patterson. A Fosse also did a background check on Bennewitz. There is a document signed by Thomas Aikset, commander of the base investigative detachment, to confirm this. Finally, there is the complete set of documents which were released by a Fosse headquarters under cover of the Department of the Air Force, relating to the described events. Meanwhile, in 1979 or 1980, the record of the year is unclear, Bennewitz and Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a psychologist and respected UFO researcher, had been investigating the story which a deeply troubled woman named Myrna Hansen told them. She claimed that she and her young son had seen a UFO while driving on a rural road near Cimarron, in northeastern New Mexico. With the patient's permission, Dr. Sprinkle began hypnotizing her, and over a 3-month period, Bennewitz and Sprinkle heard a very unusual story. Under hypnosis, Hansen said that not only had she seen several UFOs that day, but she had seen cattle being abducted, and she and her son had also been abducted by the aliens and taken to a secret underground base where they saw the cattle being mutilated and drained of their blood.
People being taken underground in New Mexico. This guy discovers
it. Some sort of implants were placed in the bodies of her and her son, and that the aliens could control their minds through these devices. Bennewitz believed the woman's story, and he believed that it was connected somehow to the lights he was seeing over Manzano. He began filming the lights, amassing over 2,600 feet of film. He also came to believe that he could receive signals from the craft that he observed. He built antennae and receivers to receive low-frequency electromagnetic transmissions that he believed came from the alien craft. Bennewitz called his mission Project Beta. Those who have seen the films and heard the tapes of the low-frequency radio transmissions insist that there is no doubt that Bennewitz was filming and recording real phenomena. Taking a step that ultimately led to his later troubles, Bennewitz wrote a computer program that he claimed could translate the alien radio transmissions. He now came to believe that he was intercepting the messages that the aliens were transmitting to mind control devices such as those that Myrna Hansen claimed had been placed in her and her son. On November 10, 1980, Bennewitz presented his evidence again, this time to high-ranking Air Force personnel including Brigadier General William Brookshire. In the report of this meeting, it is noted that Bennewitz was advised to apply for an Air Force grant to study the phenomena. Once again, however, the Fosse declined to investigate the matter themselves. Bennewitz was not to give up so easily. Besides the regular reports he was sending to APRO, he was contacting U.S. Senator Harrison Schmitt and Senator Peter Domenici, as well as other UFO investigators such as Linda Moulton Howe and John Lear. By 1982, APRO had decided to investigate Bennewitz's claims. They sent William Moore, one of their directors and a former schoolteacher turned writer and ufologist, to talk to Bennewitz. Moore had gained a degree of fame in the UFO field by co-authoring, with Charles Berlitz, the Philadelphia experiment and the Roswell incident. By now, Bennewitz's story had become quite complicated. He told Moore that the alien transmissions he had received indicated that two types of aliens had invaded the US, the peaceful whites and the evil greys. The greys, who he said were responsible for cattle mutilations and the abductions of humans, had a treaty with the US government that allowed them to build a secret underground base beneath Arculito Peak on the Jicarillo Indian Reservation near Dulce, New Mexico. The aliens, however, were about to break the treaty.
Now, what you have here is a treaty made by one type of gray, then abused by another. Remember, there's good grays. There's the positive grays from Zeta Reticula that are allies of the Andromedans and the Lyrans, which are two groups that we'll be talking a lot about in the future. But so what happens is, these treaties are made with Eisenhower by the positively aligned ETs, who still, the Greys, who still have sort of an affinity for their other family who was cloned off by the reptilians into doing their bidding. And that's why we didn't see reptilians around Earth until about, we didn't like start hearing about them more until David Icke came around. But people had always talked about like lizard people. So again, let's recap really quick what we got here. We got this private citizen, Paul BENNEWITZ, in the 90s. He starts figuring out how their mind control works. He starts figuring out how to communicate with them with lights. All this stuff he discovers Dulce, New Mexico base on his own. And he has a woman placed under hypnosis where she talks about going down into Dulce, New Mexico underground with her son and having to watch a cattle mutilation. So what happens next is he goes to the Air Force and says, look, I found evidence that these aliens are going to do shit. And they're thinking, oh, this guy's awful close to the truth. So they bring him in and they start to tear his life apart so that they can discredit him. Unfortunately, this is what I call blue booking.
The already complex story gained an additional twist in that Bill Moore later stated in a public confession that he was recruited by someone with the code name Falcon to lead Paul BENNEWITZ astray by giving him false information. He claimed that he was given his orders by an AFASI agent, and that for 4 years, he was asked to feed disinformation, including the forged Aquarius document to BENNEWITZ. This disinformation included verification of BENNEWITZ's beliefs about the Greys and the underground base at Dulce. Paul BENNEWITZ gradually became more and more paranoid, claiming that aliens came through the walls of his house at night and injected him with chemicals.
They probably did.
He began keeping guns and knives all over his house.
Finally, or government
he
agents.
Had to be hospitalized for exhaustion, and subsequently died on June 23, 2003. Stay paranoid, my friends.
That's the fate of a private citizen in the past who tried to disclose, who found his own evidence. What did they do? They created a whole misinformation campaign around the man himself. You realize that they do this. This is getting blue booked. This is what happens to people that try to share the truth. Until now. Because the whole power dynamic has changed as we approach the fifth dimension. The fifth dimensional density of the planet. This is great news because now we can talk about it. But what about guys like this? What about one of my heroes, Hunter Thompson? I found out that he was working on a 9/11 story when he committed suicide, and this same apparatus is the same apparatus that's trying to wrap its robotic tentacle arms around the rest of us while they still can with things like Q-ANON and things like Trump's your hero and everything leading up to the next stage in the game, which is already won. It's already won. So you might ask yourself, why, Keifer, would you be here warning us about something that's already taken care of? Because there's still a battle of the minds going on. This is the end of the actual Cold War playing out here. They were trying to run out the clock on us and they failed, but they still have a little bit of time to take as many of us out with them as they can. So I'm here as someone fighting misinformation, that's occurring within the disclosure community. I'm calling people out. If you're pushing a false narrative and it's not for a damn good reason, I'm calling you out. You might hear from me. But you know what? We gotta have our fairy tales too. We gotta have our fairy tales. Whatever gets us from point A to point B. But if it involves people getting hurt, if it involves people getting fucking COVID because people are saying don't wear a mask and all this, I'm coming for you. Straight up. People's lives and their families' lives and people who aren't making those choices are being affected. So right now it's all about being a model citizen, setting a good example, just doing what you gotta do to get through this with your conscience intact. Because it does get a lot better very soon. I'm gonna have a LaCroix. We're gonna watch another video. We're gonna watch some recent sightings. Because there have been some great ones. Alright. Now, this is fascinating.
Пиздец, ребята.
Russia. Russia has a totally different deal, even though they're the same half of the Cold War buddy club of US, Russia, and China, the boys club for men, because that was all the psyop too. You get it? Everything after JFK pretty much is a fucking psyop. But there's one thing that's not, and that's the real shit.
Смотрите.
There's someone that found a piece of glass at a UFO crash site that if they put it up or down, they'll either see it or they won't.
А теперь смотрите, прикол.
This, right here. You see this? You see this? You realize what this means?
Инопланетная стекляшка. Кусок стекла, блядь.
This is huge. We gotta figure out what this stuff is.
Вот что это за хуйня. Это, блядь, какая-то технология, похоже, которая нахуй это... как сказать-то?
You realize this is huge.
Ну, делает видимым.
This is our they live moment. Okay? And by the way, that's not necessarily a negative craft either. You see that? This person has found a material that shows through a looking glass the frequency of essentially 5D. Pretty soon, this is what it's going to be like.
Так, я, короче, сейчас ближе схожу, посмотрю. Так, ну-ка, сейчас.
See this? The guy can turn them on and off.
Вот это, блядь, прикол.
They're cloaked. They're cloaked all over. They're cloaked above Portland for sure.
Блядь, ну нету ничего. Пиздец, нету. Вот оно нахуй.
This is huge. Huge. Huge.
Вот так вот нахуй.
That means that this material, if it can be figured out what this material is, you could make a viewing strip out of this and see the UFO. Versus he removes that from the camera and it's
Вот как
cloaked.
этот мир работает. Люди. Оп. Оп.
Oh, see it? See it?
Оп. Оп.
Hey. The citizenry of Russia does not F around. We could learn a lot from them. We've been ruled by the same entity. You see that? Oh, and it knows that it can see him. He knows that it knows that he can see it. It's telepathic.
Видно на экране, как бы ярко, плохо вижу, но вижу. Убираю стекло. Оп. Оп. Вот тебе, блядь. Кусок стекла. Кусочек стекла, блядь. Пойду еще ближе подойду.
So now the race begins to figure out what is this stuff that this guy has. It was found at a crash site. I've already got some material. I've already got this. See what that is? That's my implant.
Не понял. Сейчас посмотрю еще.
More on that later.
Нету. Не так, нету.
Alright, we're going to watch another video real quick. I mean, this is huge. Again, this guy, he's found this material that he can see through it, and it reveals the cloak. That's his story. Alright, this is a great site for videos, by the way. I don't mind. I'll give away my sources all day long. I don't hide my sources. You can have them. Look at that. Would you look at that? That is like a frickin' Metatronic reactor or something. From Thailand. August 18th. Would you look at that shit? Oh, Florida. Oh, that's not good. If you ever see that on the road, I do recommend pulling out your camera and filming it, because that'll stop things from happening. If you're like me, you just say, hey, I'm over here, pick me up, come on.
Está haciendo lo mismo que yo. O sea, no se ve. Mira. Sí. Tengo la piel de gallina.
Colombia has some great ones. South America gets the best.
Yo sé que estamos viendo. Pero qué miedo. O sea, literal, se super. No, ya. Ya me puedo morir en paz.
Alright, we're almost at an hour. We're going to wrap up at an hour. I'm trying to keep the shows to an hour or less because it's hard for me to pay attention to anything for an hour. Alright, it's time to put on some Parliament. That's what we do at the end of the show. Alright. I hope you're enjoying the format. My voice just cracked. That was hilarious. Because, you know, my idea for this format is that it's just like...
Some people go all out when it comes to Christmas lights. They get to work early in the season and they spend a lot of money. But people are just...
Alright, I hope you're still having fun with me on my show. We're getting a little better every time, I'd like to think. There's a lot going on. Always check your sources. Just like I do. Check your agenda. Make sure you're not make sure you're not being made a monkey's uncle, etc. That's a weird term, but what I mean is there's plenty of people trying to vie for your attention right now, especially with an election. So stay vigilant. Don't buy anything. Don't buy into anything that has an agenda. If it has an agenda, it's probably a bad one. The only agenda is truth. Whoa. Alright, thanks everybody.